recording, streaming. Let's verify. We have been running. All right, we're good. Okay, let's get this thing started again. So we've got this thing blocked out. Are we happy with it? Is there anything we want to add? Let me look at my reference. I know I had mentioned maybe doing a like an intertwining snake along here, and then having it maybe go up into his mouth. That might be cool, or it might be just a waste of time. It's always hard to say, and whenever I feel like that, I feel like I need to try it out. So we'll go to transform here, and we'll go to just X symmetry and preferences. You know what? Did I add that? Yeah, line cursor to surface off. Okay, so if we're over here and we're like, okay, I want to put a snake in here and then have that snake kind of go up into its mouth. But the problem with that is a snake on one end is going to be a head on one side and then a tail on the other. What if it's two snakes? Let's try that. So we'll go here, and then this thing can be just like wrapping around like this. And then up at the top you want two snake heads, or maybe one snake head with the mouth open and then it's eating another snake head. Man, this is getting complicated. That might be more trouble than it's worth. Let's just do decoration. We can just put some fancy bolts or some inscriptions or something like that. Hey Chang, thanks for showing up. Yeah, I think we'll be good. I think we'll just be good with like designing stuff and maybe making it look like this is bound into the soft parts of the book here. So let's just refine what we have. I think we're in okay shape. Another thing is on the side here, we've got these locks. Oh, we need to make a padlock. Let me see. Let me Google. Every artist's best friend. Google image search. Ancient padlocks? Is that a thing? Ooh, yeah, there's some cool ones. Okay, so I already have one kind of pulled up here. That's kind of like a little neat little thing. We can make an old key too. We're going to need that. Let's see if there's anything else on here that kind of tickles my fancy. Here's an old looking skeleton one, although we've already got the skull here. These ones are kind of plain Jane. How fancy do we want to get? Because it's going to be kind of a small padlock, two small padlocks here. So nothing too crazy. I think these are kind of cool. Let me go ahead, save image as. I'm going to throw this into my, what are we doing? We're streaming a medieval zombie book reference. I'm going to throw this into book reference anatomy armor book. Jeez. Okay, give me a second. So we can start throwing some of these in here, and I can just have those open in Quadro. If you haven't used Quadro yet, you can give it a shot. Quadro. And that's kind of a cool one. I also want to kind of look at some of these keys and see if any of these keys kind of stand out to me as something neat that we can kind of riff off of. Oh, that's a neat one. These are a little big. This one's cool. You can save that in our book reference here. Yeah, I think we're good. I think that'll work. And then as far as the keys go, I think I've got pretty decent keys to pull from. And we're just going to need a big key for the head here. This one's kind of neat. Yeah. Okay. That's good enough. Okay. So, now that I've done that, you won't be able to see this, but I'm going to go ahead and load these into Quadro here. Again, book. And we're going to say, gimme this. And we already got that one. Give me this one. All right. Open them up. And now I can put these where I can eyeball them while I'm working. And throw them over here to the side. And I'm going to go ahead and save that preset. So we'll save it up. And hey, everybody, thanks for showing up. I stream at 4 in the morning your time, but I'm sure somewhere in the world it's like noon. But thanks for showing up. Bust don't rhyme. And let me stretch, because it is, like you said, it's too early in the morning. I wish I could stream at better times, but at those times I usually have to go to work. or it's at night, and the last thing I want to do after I get off work is to hop on the computer and start live streaming. I read my comments on Restream right here. Now, depending on how much work I'm doing, I may not comment, or I may not read the comments all that much. Fabian says, I got a question. If I got a lot of subtools, and when I isolate one polygroup, I can't subdivide the isolate polygroup. Do you get any solution? Thanks. If I got a lot of subtools, so you have a lot of subtools. Okay, let's say we have a lot of subtools too. And then I isolate one polygroup. So we've got, let's take this skull here. And if so I have a lot of subtools, and then in this subtool, if I isolate one polygroup, so we'll hit Control W and we'll look at this one. I can't subdivide the isolate polygroup. Do you have any solution? If we hit Control D, that'll subdivide. Let's find something that's a little bit more obvious. I guess that'll work. Okay, so we have subtools here. Let's go ahead and hit apply. And then now on, if it has subdivision history, let's see if it'll work. So we go mask here. So we have a polygroup on this subtool, and we hit Control D. So you won't be able to do that. But if you delete lower, isolate this polygroup, and then hit Control D, which is basically just hitting divide. You can keep doing that. So we can divide this again, and we can divide this again. So you can locally subdivide, but not if you already have pre-existing subdivision history. And honestly, doing a local subdivision, I'm not sure I would ever really do that. If I need to redistribute polygons in a meaningful way, I'll use ZRemesher. Otherwise, I'm just going to use Dynamesh. Rarely have I ever needed to, like, oh, I've got this perfect mesh, but I want to locally subdivide here, so I'm just going to mask and then subdivide this little part and leave all those triangles around, and it's fine. It's like, I would say that's pretty rare that I would do something like that. Yeah, it's noon where Akasha is. Cool. How many years of experience do I have? If you count school as experience, way too many. So I go 99 to 2001. I was Texas State Technical College in Waco, Texas. And then I went to Ringling School of Art and Design, now Ringling College, from 2001 to 2005. And then 2005 to current. So working in the industry 2005 to right now, which is what's this year? 2018? 13 years. Since the skull already has a keyhole, would it make sense to have more padlocks? So that's the weird thing is, I mean, what would maybe even be cooler, that's a good point, is if I just turn this, what my original idea was, I would turn this and it would go, and then there'd be little keys stuck in here, and then you'd open the padlocks. But that seems a little convoluted now that you mention it. So let's do this. I'm going to take these, and you know what? Sorry. We spent some time on those, but that's okay. So we're going to go and delete those. So what I'm going to do instead is, if let's say I turn this key here, and I go, we turn the key, and if the key turns inside, it's not going to do anything to the head. But let's say it actually did rotate the head for some reason. That could maybe open it up, and then that could cause a little switch release, and then these things could like pop out and go out of the way. Another thing we talked about when we were in Painter was, if these are leather, there's no point in having this thing locked, because you could just take a knife and cut through it. So what we're also going to have to do is, we can make it leather covered, but we'll have to make sure that we message that when it's worn down, it's actually just metal with maybe a little bit of leather on it. So we might have to change a little bit of that. But I like that idea. We'll go with Daniel's idea. Yeah, so chains, and I'm trying to get more details on a single chain. So in that case, okay, let's do this. I think we have, let's grab this skull here. Hit the comma key, we're going to go into brush. What am I looking for here? There's got to be, oh, you know what? We don't even need that. Let's see, brush. Come on. BI, brush, insert, curve, and okay, we do have a chain in here. So I've got that selected. Whoa. And we'll go ahead and say, okay, I got a chain on here, and we're going to go ahead and split mass points. And if I go into solo mode here, and we have this chain, and I'm like, okay, we'll go ahead and auto groups this. Actually, instead of auto grouping that and making a mess, what we're going to do is we're just going to take one of these here, do Control Shift A. So now with this visible, if I hit Control D, I can subdivide. It's not going to do a smooth subdivision, even though we had smooth turned on. It's just going to subdivide locally. So that should work. I mean, of course, if you did have auto groups on, you can just isolate this one, Control D, isolate this one again, Control D, isolate this one again. And of course, since we have lasso selected, do select rectangle. So we can keep locally subdividing this one. So this one's got a lot more subdivision than the ones around it. That should work. Assuming, again, you don't have subdivision history on all of them. If you do, that's easy enough just to fix. So you can go, okay, got all my chains here. Let's say I've already subdivided this thing for real, which again, I wouldn't suggest doing. Instead of doing this, oh, come on. Instead of actually subdividing, all you need to do is hit D for dynamic subdivisions, and then you can do whatever you want locally. Much more robust, and you can go through your increase and still keep Z modeling this thing, because again, it's just a preview. So if you want to make changes to this thing, and then we can do like a crease here, we're still in good shape. Now, instead of, you know, if you didn't have that and you wanted to have real subdivisions on here, but you also wanted to subdivide one more up, you could just take one of these out. We won't be able to split this off if we do a split hidden. Where are we at? Yeah, we won't be able to because we have subdivision history. So two ways you can go about this. You can delete lower, grab a little piece, Control Shift A, split hidden, and now you got this one by itself. You can reconstruct these subdivisions back. You can also go to this one and reconstruct those subdivisions back if you want to. And then you have this one, and then now you can just do whatever you want to this one. You can continue just hitting Control D, and now you have more subdivisions here. It'll be two separate subtools, but that's one way where you can keep subdivisions on two different things at two different resolutions, obviously with different subtools. You also could have just duplicated this whole thing off, delete lower, delete hidden, and then got rid of this one so you wouldn't have to reconstruct on this lower one, because when you reconstruct, what ends up happening is that'll kind of melt your low res. If you store a morph target on your lowest one, you can morph back, but if you're splitting something off, that morph target's not going to help you out. So probably if I had to, I would duplicate this one first, and then you just hide this one, and then I just have one I have that has melted subdivision level 1, if that's important to you. My opinion. So let's say we take those and delete them. Did I make sure? Okay, I undid out of that one. Okay, so we've decided we're going to take this skull from Daniel's suggestion here. So we're going to take this skull, and you know what? I kind of want this thing to turn. I want it to make it obvious that, like, I can just do a quarter turn here, and it's going to do something. So maybe on this side here, I'm going to say, let's turn off X symmetry, and we're just going to wear this down. And we're going to say, this is going to be a track this thing can run on. And you can go in here, we can say, hey, let's see, we want to make it obvious that something is going on here. And of course, we'll clean this up later. But we're just pre-vising now. Okay. And it helps when you do sound effects when you previs. So we'll go ahead and knock this back. And there we go. So that's going to turn along that little track there. And it also helps message to the user. This is good UX for ancient books that turn skulls. So, okay, so we've got that there. And I guess it introduces an interesting design element. So we can rotate this way. Now that head is kind of clipping a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit X to go across X symmetry again. And we're going to have to go in here. If we're going to keep that skull at the scale it is, which we can always change, I'm going to have to knock this back just a tiny bit. So I'm going to take my clay brush. I know what you're thinking, like, why are you making this ugly, concept-y clay brush? And this is how I start everything. It's going to go through an ugly baby phase. There we go. So that'll kind of slide through here, and just to kind of indicate that that skull doesn't interpenetrate too much with what's going on, I'm going to add another little bit here. Now, of course, over here, it's getting a little bit weird because I'm not going across that x-axis, but again, we're just getting this thing finessed a little bit. And we're just going into solo mode. There we go. And then over here, I'm going to go out of X mode, and then we're just going to move Accu this thing out of the way. Move Accu we've gone over before. Go to my YouTube channel and just search for Move Accu. You'll probably have 25 videos on it. So now, I think we're ready to go. We got this thing, we got this thing. We can start building this thing for real. This is a little bit not refined here. So let's say, you know what? I want to start refining these things. So I'm going to go through here. Before we start building this stuff for real, if you're ready to go and all the functionality is figured out, feel free to just start rebuilding the stuff as needed. I have not yet. I'm going to need to pop these pieces off in a very quick and dirty way. We're going to go over refining, of course. But for now, what we're going to do is we're just going to say, hey, I need these things. Those things right here. And this doesn't have to be super clean because I think most of this is just trash minus these two little lumps over here. So Control-Alt-Tap to sharpen that mask up, hit Control-W, and then we'll go Control-Shift, and we will, if you wanted to keep this intact and then just wear these things down, you could just duplicate this off, and then you could do Delete Hidden, and now we could do just a gross close holes operation. That'll give us new polygroups here. And now we can just take these and just make those solid, and then they're Dynamesh, so I can just close them off, and now I've got these two separate pieces here. And then we'd have to, of course, go back to our original here. Let's Alt-Tap this one, and we'd have to say, okay, get rid of you guys. I don't need you anymore. Again, just quick and dirty. Don't need anything fancy. If you want to make it a little bit cleaner, you could go back to your original here, and you could just say, let's clip curve this back, and on this side, we'll clip curve this back. There we go. We can re-Dynamesh that. And now it's a little bit cleaner. What's going on here? Do we have an extra copy of this thing? We've got this one here, this one here. Yeah, I think we've got an extra copy. All right, we don't need you. Deleted. So now that we've got this back side is going to go and be kind of bolted into the back, but then this front side needs to be kind of hinged in there. So let's go ahead and go, we'll just clip this side out too. There we go. Now let's figure out what's going to have to go on here. Also, if I want to steal this little piece here, it might not even be worth it. So this, when we were concepting on here, I probably should have just sculpted on a separate layer or a separate object here. Instead, what I'm going to do, it'd probably be a waste of my time. You can turn on X and Y here. And make sure you have local symmetry turned on. Probably a waste of my time to try and grab these things. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you know what? That was dumb of me. Oops. Let's do, turn dynamic off. Let's just clean this up real quick. So I'm going to go out of X symmetry. Actually, we'll go into symmetry, just Y symmetry over here. And we'll turn on our clay brush here. So we'll smooth these things out. Then I'll go back in here with my Damien standard and we'll go, whoops. I actually wanted you just to continue. You're going to be a little latch that I can grab onto. And then we've got these things. So now how is this little latching mechanism going to work? So I'm going to go ahead and mask this. And in order, if I want to just play with this and not have to worry about this stuff back here, one thing I can do is I can think about the point of articulation I'm going to need. So we've got this thing here, it's going to claw over here, but then when this thing releases, it's going to pop these things out and they're just going to swing back. So I'm going to go ahead and put an indication of that. So we're going to go into our cylinder here. And we can just throw, whoops, I guess it probably needs to go this way, huh? So we'll put a big fat cylinder in there. So we're going to go ahead and do split mask points. So now we've got a cylinder over here. We can even run a crease and just make it dynamic. So that'll be, it's going to be a really unwieldy book here. Really uncomfortable book to have on your bookshelf. That's okay. So we've got this thing here and it's going to swing on this point here, which means if it's articulating there, I don't need all this other stuff. So I'm going to hit Control W and hold down Control Shift. We're going to go into Slice. We're going to slice this, and now if I have groups turned on in my Dynamesh options and I Dynamesh this, those will be separate pieces. So now we can just split those off. And now, usually before I split, I like to turn groups off because that'll bite you in the butt later. So now that we've got those separated out, we can clean this up a little bit. Now instead of, well, clipping did that, I can go ahead and just get rid of these things. Easy enough. There you go. Delete hidden, close holes. We don't need a mirror and weld, just re-Dynamesh. We're in good shape. Now I don't have to worry about the back. So long story short, those things will come up here and then they'll somehow interact with this mesh. Bryce says, I wonder if you can make a little demo to create a female face when you have time, especially the eyes, because I'm struggling for the eyes. I've done that. Let me see if I can link you here. It depends. If you're doing stylized stuff, it might be easier to do. Go to my playlist here. Livestream highlights. Even if you're not doing stylized, sometimes it's useful to work on the eyelids separately and give you a little bit more control. So I would say maybe, do we even make that guy on this channel? Mouth bag. Oh, I wonder if I even saved something like this out. Essentially, let's do it with this guy. So we've got this guy here, and we're going to hit X to go across X symmetry. It would be something like, let's just start, I guess we can just do a high-res Z-sphere, doesn't matter. So we've got our eyeballs in here, and we're going to go ahead and split mask points. And I just want to look at this. I'm going to hit Shift and just move those things out. And now, we've got eyeballs for this little dude here. And if I want to give them eyelids and work on those separately to give me more control, and I want to sculpt them together separately later, what I can do is I can go to the side here. You can either go through here and like select lasso and try and get like half your eyeballs. I don't have time for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this off twice. I'm going to hold down Control Shift and we're going to go into trim and we're going to say give me my top eyelids. That's going to go ahead and slice and then close holes. And then I'll go to my other one and I'll say give me my top eyelids here, and then we've got our eyeball here. So now that we've got two separate polygroups, we can go through here, Q Mesh Polygroup All, hold down Shift to go along the surface normal, and we'll take these. You can also just use Deformation Inflate if you want. And now we've got eyelids over our eyeball, and now we can just rotate them back, like so. And you can work on these separately. So if you wanted to like, okay, make these things meet up, and then be like, okay, here's my eyelids, they're going around my eyeball, and then we've got our lower eyelids here, something like this. And then we need to modify the skull to allow. So now we've got eyelids and we've got an eyeball. And then once you're happy with these eyelids, it could be just a matter of taking these things. Let's take our skull and go above our eyelids, and then we'll merge down, and we'll merge down. And oops, I had merged my eyeballs in there. Or wait, no I didn't. Yes, I did. So I'm going to take this one, and we're going to, oops, don't want to merge you. So this one, merge down, merge down. It's going to maintain my Dynamesh settings here, so I can just re-Dynamesh. And now I have an upper lid and a lower lid that you can go through here and refine. And from here it's just sculpting, so you go in your Damien standard brush, hold down Alt, and you can make this one, and use masking if you need to like mask your lower, and then pull this down here, and then, or do the opposite on the other side. It's just general sculpting tasks. So that'd probably be my way to do that. Does that look cool? That's kind of creepy. Do I like that better? Let's keep that. Let's see how that works. I am going to temporarily, just so these things move together, I am going to put the eyeballs in there. And you know what? We can just control drag. We can just make this all one mesh. So here is our creepy skeleton man with eyeballs now. So let's see. We'll bring everything else back, and we can get rid of this thing. and then X here, here, and maybe his eyes can like turn red. Some kind of Goonies. Cash says, it's necessary to go to art school to learn ZBrush and other 3D software like Maya. Will it help me while getting jobs? It'll help you network, and it'll help you in the sense that you'll be working around students who hopefully make you better if you need that. But learning software, it doesn't require school. And also, depending on the kind of job you get, portfolio is always king. I don't know that I've ever been like, oh, you went to whatever, even though your portfolio sucks, I'll still give you a shot. I don't care where you went to school. If your portfolio is great and you can prove to me that you can do what we need for our style of what we're working on, and you're proficient and you've got a nice breadth of work that prove to me that you can, you make good decisions, then you're in good shape. Because there are too many tutorials on the internet about ZBrush. Well, that's part of the other problem too, is you want to make sure you're learning right, I guess, but I don't know. I learn new software like once a week. It's doable. It's possible to set a retopology workflow to a micro. In other words, it's possible to automate the full setup so you can just click one hotkey and you can start retopo right away. Yeah, I assume. Seems right, like doing some sort of not Z Startup Master. We would go to like Z Repeat It, and you could be like, okay, record me. I would assume you'd probably have a Z tool already set up, but if you were like, okay, record me, and now append a Z sphere. So hit record. You've got a Z sphere in your scene. You'd probably want to make sure it's positioned out of the way first. So we'd go like. Okay, so let's say if we can record a macro. So we're going to say record new, and the first thing we're going to need to do is go to, let's see, what do I use my custom thumbnail menu up here. So I'm going to say go into turn down dynamic resolution to 0, density down to 1, no skin thickness, go into edit topology mode, and now I'm in draw mode already, so we're good. So we'll hit end recording, and we'll say auto retopo. So now, if we didn't have the Z-sphere, and we go append, and I go, okay, I'm ready to retopologize. So I'm going to scale this down here, and I'm going to be, okay, I'm ready to go. Oh, I don't have any of my settings set, so I'm going to hit retopo auto. No, it didn't work. Maybe because I went in here. I don't know. Topology, rigging, edit topology, adaptive skin, yeah, density 0, this one 1. I wonder if it's like hard coded with like a Z-sphere name or something. I don't know, but that should still be the same as a Z-sphere 1. I don't know. You probably could. You would maybe have to go edit script and see what's going on in here. I don't know what that thing is. Oh, that's actually me drawing something onto my canvas, maybe? I don't know. Maybe. John Jake says, hi Mike, could you quickly run through how to rename a subtool with lowercase in the first letter? Can I? Let me think. Test, uppercase. Let's go test, and I'm going to select this, hit Control C. So we've got test uppercase, and then if I paste that, it's still going to be test uppercase. How would I make that lowercase? I have no clue. Anybody know? I've never even attempted that. Garrett's right. I'm probably going to do some retopo on this thing for sure. Amish says, how's it going? Your ZBrush Core course's intro. My ZBrush Core intro course is pretty short, and well, you learn the entire program in one course. And if you go to, if you're using regular ZBrush, go to the Intro to ZBrush 4R8 What's New series, and that'll get you caught up also on more Gizmo functionality. But yeah, I've ever since the gizmos come out, my transpose has only been used for array mesh and transpose smart mask. Cool, thanks for showing up, Alex. I think his eyes is tricky as transition between the brow bone, the corner fat, and the eyelid. Yeah, and even at this point, if you wanted to dynamesh at a higher resolution and then immediately ZRemesh, so that you would have those nice folds that go up and in, because when you dynamesh, depending on the resolution, it's going to be, if you do a low res dynamesh, it's just going to smooth all those transitions out. So if you, how would I explain this? So if we take this one here and we go back, do we have a version where we put those on? Or they're separate? Damn. Before I put these things on and they were just kind of sitting there, I would probably shrink them down, dynamesh at a higher resolution, remesh that, and then I could have geometry that I could pull into any direction, especially around this area and this area over here, so I can get a nice fold and overlap. Basically, what I'm trying to get across is you would have a transition that's more like that. So you get a fold over here, and of course, if you dynamesh this, it's just going to stick that together again. So you'd want to remesh this and then go back in and then make this kind of fall over so that you get a nice fold in here, and it'll just look a lot better. So the axe here. Cool, thanks for showing up, Compressor. Steven says, will there be more texturing videos like Substance Designer stuff? Thanks for your tutorials. No problem. Yeah, we're basically gonna, that first one we did was just a previs to be like, hey, does it look right? Does it look how I had expected? And then we'll do this for real, and it'll probably be in Substance. Old school macro, no Z-repeat work for me. Cool. Yeah, so instead of doing the Z-repeat, just make a macro up here, this new macro. You can just do new, start, and end, and that'll work. My custom menu up here, I usually just go doop doop doop, so it's 3 little things, but yeah, I could just replace all of that with just a simple button and then not have to do that. Cheapest Wacom needed for ZBrush, probably a used one. I've only ever used the Intuos Pro line right now. This one isn't expensive. I'm using the Intuos Pro Medium, and it's old. It's a really old one. So maybe a used Intuos. Cool, cool. Alrighty. Maybe give random name before changing to lowercase. Let's see. So we'll put in a dummy letter and then say, you know what? Let's see if we can, like, boy, it really doesn't want me to, I don't know. Cool. For my specs here, go to my YouTube channel, and I have a hardware section. So we're using the AMD Ryzen Threadripper 1950X, and then 128 gig RAM and GeForce 1080 Ti. All this stuff is yours. Read that description, and I'll get you caught up. Alrighty, so moving right along. And I might have to leave a little bit early because I got to do some editing this morning. I've got some projects I need to wrap up. So this thing's going to go through here, and it's going to clamp on here. So what I could do is I could go to the top here, and I could mask out where these things need to go. And you know what? Let's do a mask curve and see if we can't just curve out exactly what I need. And then we can maybe push this up and over. And we can use just our move Acu to kind of pull this into shape here. So if we have a shape like this, and those go up and around, and then down, I'm trying to see if this is going to message what I want. Let's go ahead and take our trim dynamic, and we'll pull this down. Let's go ahead and raise that resolution just a tiny bit. Here. Yeah, and then somewhere back here, we'll have to swing back in. So we'll take this, Good enough. So now this guy, go out of X symmetry here, he has to be able to turn and then go in here, and then there has to be some sort of release. So now on these things here, let's go ahead and indicate. And we can just use, if I wanted to, I could say, well, okay, let's just do this. So I'm going to duplicate this off. I'm going to shoot that down to the bottom, hold down Shift and tap. And we're going to take this one here, shoot that down to the bottom. And then I know that this one I want to be subtractive, my duplicate, so I'm going to merge these down, Control drag. And now we've cut out these things here. Now they cut a little deep, which probably unintended side effect of me being lazy, but we can also just make sure that that fits right in there now, and it also cuts cleanly through all those other pieces. Like that. So, oops, let's go back forward one more. So on this one here, what I'm going to do, instead of having it go that deep, I'm going to indicate just the thickness of this one with clip. There we go. So now we've got that one split off here. So we've got this new one, and then we've got our book. So now when I go through and I say, okay, now you are subtractive, and we merge this down and we redynamesh, that's a little less destructive. But it still kind of indicates where I need these things to go. And then they'll just clamp in here. Standard brush, raise that Z intensity up, turn our lazy radius off. There you go, needs to go in here. And again, this is important because if you ever do animate this, then it never has to go, say, here and goes, brrr. We at least have indications of where these things plug in. Now, you know what I'm going to do here? You know what, because I don't want to have to take that out as well. Let's, we'll leave that alone for now. We'll leave that on, but that's just placeholder. So we've got this here, and even on this one, what we just did, I'm going to do it for this one too. Probably should have done that first. Okay, so and again, now when this thing rotates out, that'll be good. And then we'll be able to read our book. That's going to articulate back. That's going to be plugged in here. So I think we're ready to start doing our real deal holy field here. We'll hit X, local sim. Anything else? Okay, I think we're good. Cool, alrighty. David says, sorry, this question already, but how do you know when to go to Dynamesh and when to work on clean topology and subdivisions? Basically, I will do that after I've already kind of started breaking things apart. And it varies from project to project, or asset to asset, I should say. So if I wanted to go through here and refine this a little bit more and start busting pieces out and figuring them out, then I would. If you go to some more examples of this, let's just go to my profile here. And if you go to anything in here, you're going to see it's going to always start from just a nothing mesh, and then I start splitting pieces off and figuring it out. And then once I get to a certain point, then that's when I decide, okay, there's not going to be any more surprises, so now I feel comfortable enough with the design to go through and start making it for real. Probably the most obvious example is this mech helmet down here. And that thing just starts as a nothing sculpt. And then you just refine as you go through. Again, just to make sure you don't have any surprises. And every single one of these steps here, you should throw it into Engine and make sure it's what you want. You know, just go through Painter real quick. And more on that is in my GDC 2015, which is this one here. If you scroll down, that talks more about that. And what else? That's the basics anyway. So let's say we're happy with this and we need to start refining it. So now it gets kind of to the boring part, which is how do I start making this stuff for real? And it's going to be a lot of primitives and Z-modeler stuff. Let's see if I can simplify this anymore, because yeah, this is all going to be separate. So I do want to keep this as a separate mesh, and then we can start detailing this. That's just going to be kind of sculpted on. So it would be like this, where it's like, okay, we'll sculpt this in like so. And then these bands here. So one thing I do have, if I turn everything off and turn everything on back on again, I do have a book sitting out here that is just a simple Z model. Of course, I was rearranging stuff, so I guess I can push that into place here. So that could be a starting point for our book. For the rest of this here, let's go ahead and say, I think I'm ready. And this one we might want to explore a little bit more. Let's hit the S key here, and we're going to go ahead and just chop this down here. So when that clamps in, that'll go through here, and then this can actually be maybe even a separate piece. I mean, I guess I don't hate that. Okay, something like this. So now, what I am going to do is I do want to keep this Dynamesh separate, but I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this off. Again, shoot down to the bottom, take this one here, shoot down to the bottom, and now we can just do like a refined pass on these two. So if I merge these down, that's good. And then again, I'm going to duplicate this one off, shoot down the bottom, and we'll do a subtractive here. So now I have a better representation of what exactly I need to make for this piece here. That'll work. And whenever you Dynamesh things that are very, very close, sometimes it'll do little projection. You'll get these little artifacts. But again, we're working loose, fast and loose here, so it's not too big a deal. And then this one back here, you know what, we don't even need that anymore. So I'm going to take this one here, because we can just rebuild that. Solo mode. Yeah, we'll delete that. All right, save often. Book 03. Save iteratively, you never know. And we'll start refining. Are you interested in the new Wacom Cintiq, or do you prefer the dual screens? I like having real estate, and I also don't like, if I'm ever get back into like drawing stuff, I might get into the Cintiq, but for sculpting, I'm not a Cintiq guy. Like, my face is too close to the screen. My arm constantly being up for 12 hours a day is a deal breaker, so no thanks. And I'm also faster with my tablet than I am trying to like move up here, file, let me move my entire arm down to this corner and let me move. It's like, ugh, gross. Cool. Ian says, love your videos. What about some heavy industrial hard surface stuff? Trying to figure out, should I stick to 3ds Max or move on to ZBrush for that stuff? Active Booleans and stuff. I do have not a bunch of heavy industrial stuff, but I'm sure there's some heavy industrial people who use ZBrush, but it's kind of up to you. You can, if you're proficient in 3D Studio Max, stay in 3D Studio Max. If you're really good, if you're not really good, then maybe give ZBrush a shot. Oh, you can use Z Scene Manager to make it lowercase, says Ox. Do I have that installed at home? I have that installed at work when I do lots of subtool name changes and stuff, but there's a Z Scene Manager you can install. I do have it, but I don't think it's installed. I don't think my license is at home. Let's see. Oh, I guess I do. Okay, so here's, oh, it's the free version. So I only have the free version at home. Here's the Scene Manager. So we go to test here and we say rename it. We can say test lowercase. There we go. And it keeps it lowercase. There you go. Use Z Scene Manager. Good call. Amish says, what's the first Wacom tablet ever used? Mine was a Wacom Intuos 1 with a serial port plug-in when I was at Ringling, I think. Yeah, that must have been it. Jeremy N says, can you full screen ZBrush? Yeah, you should be able to. In fact, it almost full screens too much for some people, and that it takes over your entire bottom taskbar too. Since I come from ArchViz, so 3D Studio Max is a must kinda. I'm proficient, but I love some ZBrush features, array mesh. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool fast stuff, especially if I'm ever doing like really straightforward stuff, I'll probably use Fusion 360 as far as like, here's all my mechanical bits that need to be super mechanically. But if I'm just concepting stuff out, ZBrush is much better. But again, you can concept your stuff out in whatever program you want. Like I mentioned before, just do a really quick, and this stuff will also link back to my YouTube channel. So for example, how are we doing on time? Okay, we got about 15 minutes. For example, if you want to see the making of this, you can click on it. Actually, this will be a little bit newer. Is there anything new? Do I do anything anymore? Let's do this one. If you scroll down here, you'll see the making of this particular armor set. And you've watched a GDC presentation, you'll see that this is actually the most important step, and then everything else past this is just diminishing returns. So if you want to see the making of this thing, you can go click on the YouTube link here. It's like, okay, we're going to start from scratch. So we'll go to YouTube here, and you can see how it starts out. And at this point, once you've done like the 4-hour little nothing sculpt, you can take that into 3D Studio Max and go, okay, now that I know where all these pieces need to go, I can start modeling this for real. Same thing with any asset you want to make. This is really just figuring out to make sure that you know the direction you're going in is worth spending all that really intense time investment before. You don't want to invest a bunch of time into modeling something perfect and box model and sub-demeshed and control loops and all that trash if you end up taking a step back after all those hours of work and go, oh, that design just really isn't working. So get your design done first and then decide, do I really need to model this all the way, and how I'm going to attack this problem with everything in context as opposed to attacking problems in a vacuum. So regardless of if you want to stay in 3D Studio Max for your final model, you can still use ZBrush for previs, which is what I would do. Best place to start learning ZBrush for environments and props. I don't consider anything I do as far as characters any different than a prop. If you can model this dude, you can model a fire hydrant, and surprisingly vice versa. There is nothing about a fire hydrant that is any different to how I approached making anything on this thing individually. So if you break down every single piece of this guy as a fire hydrant, which you can make, everybody can make a fire hydrant. Everything on here is the same process of making a fire hydrant. It's just taking the individual shape and going, okay, how do I make that for real? And it's just that's his technique. So having said that, you can go to, just because you can go to the Z Classroom and watch their videos. On my YouTube channel, if you go to my playlist here, there's an intro to ZBrush Part 1. Part 2 and Part 3 is on my Gumroad and my Cube Brush. But if you go to Intro to ZBrush Part 1 and then watch the ZBrush 4R8 What's New, and actually on my YouTube, Intro to ZBrush Part 3 has all the ZModeler stuff, and Intro to ZBrush Part 2 has your custom interface stuff. So between those three, that'll get you up and running. And you can, it's not environment focused, but at least you'll know ZBrush. I don't know that learning ZBrush just about environments is going to help you all that much. I would say just learn ZBrush and then apply that to your environment tasks, as opposed to what's the only menu options I need to know for environments. That's all. I only want to know this button, and I want to know this button. It's like, well, you need to know a lot of the buttons in order to become proficient in problem solving. Environments, props, vehicles, weapons. Can you talk about that repeat it plugin? Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. All you need to do is just hit this record, and it'll record an action. So I have a bunch in here. At home, I probably don't, but I'll do stuff like if I want to and it's basically just a way to record an action and then apply it to all of your subtools. So you can, it's just like doing an action script in Photoshop, where you go, okay, record me Photoshop. I'm going to do this, 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 and this. Stop recording, and then when you hit that button, it'll play it back. Exact same thing here. So if you wanted to like group visible all of your subtools, you just say group visible and then do all, and it'll go through every single one of your subtools and run a group visible operation. Do you have any Fusion videos? CAD is awesome for weapons since it's actually used to design weapons. I'm trying to find a nice workflow from CAD NURBS to game assets. I do have on my YouTube channel the Fusion 360 Quick Start. And in this Fusion 360 Quick Start, if you go down here, working with imported objects, it's going to talk about exporting objects out of Fusion 360 into ZBrush and working on them, and also working on little complex objects in ZBrush first to kind of concept it out, and then taking that back into Fusion and rebuilding it. Two different ways. Either you can box model in ZBrush and then take that in and make it a solid body in Fusion, or you can just do a crappy sculpt and then take that into Fusion and use that as a 3D. Instead of using image planes, you can use it as a 3D model that it'll just sit in there, and then you can model around this using your sketch planes and stuff like that. So then, you know, your crappy sculpt can become something really, really nice. So again, just prevising in ZBrush and then wrapping it up and finalizing it. Now, as far as the NURBS to game res, there's some fancy stuff you can do that goes beyond my knowledge. I don't do that, but it's totally possible. In fact, you can poly reduce in Fusion 360. I don't remember the steps, but I synced it. I synced it done. Can you show me how to use a height map to make terrain in ZBrush? Is there a way? I tried noise, but it didn't work. Maybe I made some mistake. For your height map, I would just apply that as surface noise, and then bring in your alpha in here. I don't do terrain in ZBrush. You can use your displacement map. You can load in a displacement map here, and then apply that to a plane. So for example, let's see if this will even work. If we take, also you can use this terrain 3D. This is kind of a fun little one to play with if you go down here to initialize. Not that you would use this with displacement to generate real terrain, but since we're talking about it, you can use this to add more and less points and kind of divide up. So sometimes this is useful for some stuff, but if you wanted to, say, start with a plane 3D, make polymesh 3D, and then we go down here to our displacement map, and we say we load up our terrain displacement map, which in this case is going to be, I don't know, any one of these look like terrain? That one does. Not really, but we'll say it does. So then if we do displacement on, requires a texture. Oh, okay, yeah, right. Texture, new texture, and then now our displacement is on. Boy, it's been a while since I played with displacement, as it should be obvious. Texture, we did a new texture, and then displacement. We've selected our displacement and then our intensity. Okay, there we go. So you can apply your displacement as a, it's kind of like surface noise, and then it's just a displacement preview. So we crank that up, say, okay, this is our what we want to do, and then what we would need to do now is apply our displacement map to our geometry. So we'd hit apply, and then I go ahead and apply our displacement. So before I did that, I would probably, and also you want to make sure you have enough resolution in order to sustain that kind of detail. So I'm going to subdivide this a couple times. And also this displacement seems to be pretty intense. So we'll say apply displacement. Apply displacement, that's better. And then before I do that, I would go to layers, make a new layer, and maybe even, what am I looking for here? Morph target, store morph target. So I have all this information, and then we can apply our displacement map, and then I can dial it in on our layer here. It's like, oh, you know what? I just want that much displacement. And we can bake all, and then I can go back in here with my BMO brush, and I can morph out any places I wanted to stay away from, or I could go down here to my morph target. Maybe. You could switch, and then you can just morph in like where you wanted that terrain. So if you wanted to like stay away from your edges, you can morph that back in. Or use surface noise, but same basic idea, if that makes sense. Amish says the only other sculpting software I've used besides Mudbox is Pixelitic Sculptress. Cool. It's been a while since I've used either of those. They're totally cool. I think most programs have a sculpting component to them now. Blender and I think Maya has that kind of built in too. Garrett's correct. Yeah, we just went over the displacement thing. Hey, PavWork bought and studied your intro to ZBrush 2. Really enjoyed it. Helping lots. Thanks for that. Trying to learn everything before buying part 3. Do you think it's realistic for someone without a college education to learn ZBrush at home and eventually get work from it? Yeah, it's all based on that portfolio. So for sure, I know people who haven't gone to school and have really good portfolios. I would say it's probably fewer. I'm not sure why. And even looking back at my career, going like, well, did I need to go to schools? I went to 2 schools. Did I need to? And looking back, it's easy for me to go, nah. I mean, I could just learn it. But back then, they didn't have quite the tutorials that are available now. And number 2, is that really true? Would I have sat at home and done the tutorials and gotten better? It's totally doable, but would I have done it? That's a good question. Question for the ages. I have not tried sculpting in Blender. I need to get into Blender. I gotta find the time. Sebastian says you can download DEM image for generating terrain and use them as displacement maps. Yes. More general question for Steve. Do you have a good 3D? Do you think a good 3D artist should be good at traditional arts like painting and sculpting in clay? Again, it's all about your portfolio. If someone has a digital portfolio and they also include some traditional clay stuff, it's a bonus. It's like, oh wow, that's really neat that you can go in there with Chavant and just knock it out, and but it's not like I'm gonna hire you. This is just me personally speaking. Then it's just my opinion. So I'm not like a hiring manager where I work, or I don't hire people. But in my brain, what I'm thinking is, it's a cool bonus, and if it helps you get better at what you need to do for your job, by all means, study traditionally. And I would always say I would just draw and paint and sculpt traditionally, just because it's fun to do. But as far as getting proficient at those first, no. Especially in the production nature of our work, it's a cool thing, but it's not a necessary thing. Troy says, do you have any tips on how to make swirly bits on the handguard of a rapier inside of ZBrush? Yes, and we will probably get into that with our book too as we move forward, when we start getting into start getting into detailing this thing up. Off the top of my head, if you wanted to do like just a real quick and dirty one thing you can do is you can do a BS spiral. That's kind of a fun one. You can just like spiral. You can hold down Alt. So you can kind of go through here and play around with that. Actually, I kind of like that. Let me see if I want to. Kind of makes, ooh, yeah. Can we make this work? Can we make this work? Hold on. The BS, what is it? Spiral, BSA. You can tell I don't use the spiral brush very often because I don't have it saved as a hotkey or anything, but does that do anything for me? I kind of like that. It kind of breaks up that area here. So on this side, maybe I'll do I can always just mirror and weld that. So if this is working for me, and that's going to be kind of plugged into a back of the book here, would I want to morph that back, or would I just want to insert something on here? Let's just play with this. So I'm going to make that a little bit more usable here, and I'm just going to go to Alt-EM, drop in a cube here, and I will, again, we're just playing it quick and dirty. We're not doing everything perfect because, again, we're just testing stuff out here. So we're going to say this needs to go back here. So this is just decoration. I don't want it interfering with the pages of my book necessarily. So what I'll do is I'll push this in here, make sure that we have some thickness to here. There we go. And then back here we can just clip that out real quick, maybe. Or we can go through here and just clean this up. So Go ahead and smooth this back. So again, this I don't want to have interfere here. Now, we have to ask ourselves, what did that do to my design? And it kind of made it a little bit more bizarre and magical and Harry Potter-ish, maybe. If that's something you didn't like, then you just drag this back or save or duplicate off a copy in here. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. This thing kind of comes out, it kind of wraps around. I don't know, it's interesting to me. So we'll go ahead and we'll keep it. Garrett says, I recently worked on switching to Blender to Maya. It's actually much more fun. Yeah, I've been using Maya forever just for our backbone production pipeline, especially when it comes to, like I always say, the animation pipeline is so Maya based and Motion Builder. But man, I've been eyeballing Blender. One guy you want to check out for sure is Jerry Perkins. So MX1001, look him up. He is prolific at Blender. He does so much cool stuff. Every single thing on here you can click, and it's just like tons and tons of Blender tools and hard ops, and lots of different techniques, and even sculpting, and then creating your final mesh, all that stuff, all in Blender. Super fast, super fun, super cool. So check out Jerry Perkins. He's got a lot of really good stuff. I need to sit down and do it, but you know how it goes. Have you ever tried MOI? And what are your thoughts on it? I have never tried it. I think I remember seeing that a few years ago. MOI 3D. Yeah, this thing. Yeah, and somebody sent this to me recently. Never got around to using it, but it looks cool. One subtool, mask part of it, merge the second subtool while using Dynamesh and keeping the mask area so it doesn't get Dynameshed. Keep finger details, for example. Let's think. So we have one subtool. Say this is a subtool. And we mask part of it. Merge it with a second subtool. Oh, yeah, no. In order to, yeah, it's going to Dynamesh everything, because the very first thing you do when you Dynamesh is you have to, you want to Dynamesh, right? So you'll control drag, and that's literally just to clear your mask, and then you're allowed to Dynamesh. So not Dynameshing something is not an option on a subtool, so you'd have to break those apart. Yeah, you'd have to do some fancy footwork. Garrett says, Pav, if you knew what hard surface piece you're making, like a gun, would you start in ZBrush or Maya? If you're just matching something, and you had a lot of really good, amazing reference, then start in whatever makes sense for you. I tend to, if there's a complicated piece I need to figure out, I'll do it in ZBrush just because I'm just a little bit looser and faster in ZBrush. But yeah, if you're just modeling from like a blueprint, whatever will get you there fastest is what I would do. How many pieces are a rough minimum for a portfolio? Asked Dirk. Kind of depends on the position you're applying for and what level you want to come in at. I would say the bare minimum, and it also, you have to make sure it's tailored towards the studio you want to work for. So if you're going to want to work for Naughty Dog versus Blizzard versus Epic, and even at Epic, what game you want to kind of work on and be proficient at and what they're hiring for, you'd want to tailor your portfolio to have lots of examples of what they're working on. So let's say I want to work on World of Warcraft at Blizzard, and so you would have a portfolio filled to the brim, ideally with a bunch of different really good examples of characters for World of Warcraft or props or environments. And if you're just bare minimum, want to come in as junior and not have a whole lot of questions asked and maybe skip the art tests, that's a tough question. It kind of depends on I wish I had a better answer. I don't know the answer to that one. It can't be too few, because then I'll wonder, well, it's got to be just enough to where I can see that you can consistently hit the mark, and there's not a big question in my mind of, well, they did it right twice, but did they just get lucky twice? But you also don't want to put in too much stuff, because if it starts getting degrading in quality, I'm going to be like, well, do they not know what quality is, or did they just get lucky a few times and the rest of the time this is the work that I can expect from them? So that's a tough one. Link says, new detail looks fun, a little bit practical, you know, shelf the book maybe. Exactly. And shelving this thing, oh my god, can you imagine putting this thing like on your bookshelf? Oh, what a nightmare of a book. You're right, because it's going to be like, clunk. You know what? Okay, that's a good point. So let's make this thing a little bit more mobile. So when this thing is just, it's not a shelf book, because we just messaged, like a Link just brought up, we just messaged that basically this thing is going to be a nightmare if you wanted to put this book on a shelf. Now what we could possibly do, that might be kind of fun, is since we've already added these elements, okay, let's see if we can do this real quick. So this, okay, what I'm going to do is duplicate this. I'm going to mirror it in the Y and the Z. So we'll just mirror that in the Z. And then for this thing here, I'm going to see if I can't trim this and then trim all this. So now we've just got that piece here, and we need to integrate this piece with this piece. For this piece here, I wonder if I can just go to the bottom here, and I'm going to clip this out here. That'll work. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and merge these down, dynamesh them together, and now we've got a little back piece on here that kind of matches. Let's go ahead and H-polish this. There we go. So now these match, and now what might be a good idea is, okay, so we've done this stupid design element. I like it, but maybe if let's play around with this a little bit. So we're going to hit X symmetry. Give me a second. Z plugin, transform, activate symmetry, X. Let's go Y and Z, local symmetry. So now hopefully we can do both of these at once. Ooh, not really. Ish, we can. So we have this here. So let's say if we're going to commit to this design element, let's try moving this out and maybe even moving this down. And we can make this a little bit more mobile. So what I mean by that is if these were just carrying straps, so you throw it over your shoulder like a suitcase, and then if you need to pop it open, you can unlock it. But you don't want to be carrying around like this in your hand, or throw it into, you want to keep it kind of out with you. So we can make these into like carrying straps. So in order to do that, we'll go ahead and loop these through. And just really quickly, we can maybe do a cube here. We'll go ahead and punch these through. So this is, if you wanted to do live Booleans, this would be one way you could do that. But what we're going to do for now is we're just going to basically punch through here just to make those cleaner. And you know what? Let's also grab this back corner here. So we're going to cut through here. Now, here's part of the problem. We need to make these subtractive, so I'm going to take these ones here, and we're going to just group as dynamesh sub. And now when we dynamesh that, we'll go ahead and cut through there. So now we've got these pieces here. This thing can probably be replaced. Select it. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's say turn on X symmetry, again, Y and Z. Go ahead and get rid of these, delete hidden. How did I really have real, oh, did we add subdivisions to that? I'm like, I never work with subdivisions. There we go. Delete hidden. And on this one, we can put in maybe something more like this. That'll make those a little bit more stable. There we go. And we'll split mass points. So now we can loop like a strap through here, and then it's going to be like a little mobile carrying thing. And that's the other thing too, is it's not going to put stress on these parts here. So if I put the carrying case on the back, I'd be like, well, you'd want to like carry it from the back, maybe like a briefcase, but we'll carry it from the front. because that leaves the binding alone. But you could also just add a bunch of frilly stuff to here and do the exact same thing. So I'll say this is our strap here. So we go to brush, insert, curve, and obviously it wouldn't be a military strap. It would be something like, although there should be something, right, that's the shoulder strap. Let's turn off X. You know, something like that, and these can meet up or whatever they need to do. But I don't know, something like that maybe. All right, it's 7:11. I'm gonna have to head out. I want to work as a character modeler in indie game company as a junior artist and work my way up to regular artist, etc. Do junior artists skip art tests? Kind of depends on the studio too. Oops, I might have missed some questions here, but apologize if I missed any. Yeah, probably not. I don't know, it kind of depends on the company, I suppose. Astral on pedestal book. Yeah, you just want to lay this down on a big thing. For someone who just graduated from university but can't relocate to work, should they have a diverse portfolio that covers as many bases as possible in order to establish themselves as a freelance artist? Yes. Freelance, you probably want as few questions as possible if you're doing contract work. Have you ever thought of doing a video series where viewers could send you their artworks and you could review them and give them feedback? Yeah, that was one of the first original things I was going to do, is like once a month, just kind of go through and do sculpt overs. I need to set up a system for that. I'm going to need some help being able to kind of wrangle that. So we'll maybe figure that out, because that would certainly give me, I enjoy doing that. If you want, you can go to my CGMA site. I do a CG Master Academy. We go through ZBrush for concepting, just like what we're doing now, and go through the steps, and then that's more personal feedback. But I wouldn't mind doing it on the Twitch stream. Yetkin says, wait there, what was that Dynamesh sub thing? Can you please show that again? Yeah, so that's when I want to Dynamesh something, and I want to put on, you know, I go brush insert, and say we wanted to put on a dog head onto my back of the book here, make it really impractical. So now if I control drag, it'll go ahead and Dynamesh those two things together. However, if you have, you want to put a cube on here, and you're like, you know what, I actually want this cube to cut out of my book, what you can do is you can isolate this one, and you can go to polygroup, group as Dynamesh sub, and now you can just control drag, it'll cut it out. Another thing you can do, if you don't feel like doing that, is you can go ahead and split that off into its own subtool, or you can append a subtool and move it into place. And now you can say, I want this to be subtractive. And now when I merge these things down, it's going to group that as a Dynamesh sub because I told it to be subtractive, and now it'll cut through. So if I go into solo mode here, you'll see that's the result. Something like that. Cool. Riet asked me, do you have any advice for a stylized character artist who isn't sure what company to aim for? Yeah, aim for a company. At least pick one that you can, or maybe pick one that's kind of broad, so you can be like, well, this style will work for, you always want to play the numbers game. You know, maybe you always don't want to. Maybe you don't want to play the numbers game, what do I know? But if you play the numbers game, that just gives you a higher percentage to kind of fit your puzzle piece into a different studio. So maybe pick one that's a little bit more broad style. But if it's really good and it's stylized, I don't think anybody's going to look at it and go, well, they can do that really well in this style, but what if it's a slightly different stylized? Could they do that? It's like, well, most people who are really good can adjust, you know, but then again, ideally you don't have them asking those questions. Should I start doing a job or keep improving till I'm confident for a job? By the way, I'm getting job offers with my current work. Yeah, that's awesome. You're always going to keep improving. So that's just a given. I mean, apply. Usually you have to apply just to pay your bills. So yeah, apply now. Cool. Alrighty. I'm going to head out. Like I said before, I got to get some editing out of the way. So we'll start refining probably next live stream. We'll go ahead and start cleaning this stuff up and rebuilding it and making it nice and neat and pretty. But you guys have gotten a taste for a little bit of that already, so we'll figure it out as we go along. Can you full screen in ZBrush? My computer had a crash when I asked the question. Yeah, I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, this little size and position thing, you can just maximize the window. Cool. Alrighty. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, I'll try and enjoy it. Cool, from Spain. Alrighty. I'm gonna head out. Let me go ahead and stop all this stuff, and you guys have